West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Gelatin. Gelatin is the jiggly wiggly stuff that makes your Jell-O and your gummy candy. Goes in a whole lot of other foods and pharmaceuticals and cosmetics. It's in a lot of stuff. It's big business, and most of it is made from animal products. So about 15 years ago, a guy from Wisconsin went down to Mississippi with a plan to make gelatin out of catfish waste, all the stuff that's left over from catfish processing, the stuff that would just typically be thrown away. This guy and his business partner brought in all these potential investors and told them this business plan was a sure bet. There was nothing they didn't know about making gelatin out of catfish waste. The gelatin was perfected and ready to be sold. They already had a $3 million contract set up with a buyer for it. Sounded great. Investors handed over hundreds of thousands of dollars to the project. The state of Mississippi also gave them hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants. They also got a loan from a bank. And for a while, things seemed to be going well, at least as far as the investors knew. The guy running the gelatin from catfish waste company was sending them emails and letters telling them how well things were going, telling them the company, quote, is producing product, shipping, and invoicing customers. We have contracted orders from 2 large customers totaling 3,000 metric tons per year. We've completely sold out of gelatin at a good price, end quote. The U.S. Navy's interested in our amazing catfish waste into gelatin process. Oh, and hey, by the way, we've just signed a contract for over $1 million with a new processor. Plus, we're going to get 50% of the profits from that new second processing plant. But we're just a little short on liquid cash to get over the hump till that second plant is open. So if y'all could chip in $25,000 more apiece, or more if you're feeling generous, that would be great. And so the investors kicked in more cash. But guess what? And I bet you can probably guess where this is going. Yeah, there was no new processor or second plant. There were no $1 million contracts. In fact, there was barely even any gelatin. There was a whole lot of catfish waste. From court documents, they were, quote, never able to manufacture a sellable product, often pouring the results of their attempts in a ditch behind the plant. In fact, they were only able to make viable batches of the product a couple of times. As a result, the company had no customers and never made any sales, end quote. An investor testified that he asked the guy running the company why he did not tell the investors the truth in these letters he was sending out, to which the guy replied, quote, they can't handle the truth. Now, I said these were court documents because ultimately federal prosecutors brought multiple felony charges against this guy and his catfish waste to gelatin scheme that bilked investors and a bank out of their money. He always maintained his innocence, but ultimately he was convicted on mail fraud and bank fraud charges, ordered to pay about $2 million, and sentenced to 70 months in prison. He was released in 2014. But recently he's been peddling a new project. This was the headline in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel last summer. A Wisconsin man is scanning ballots and suing a county clerk as he launches his own election review. The story that follows is as nutty as the headline sounds. To be clear, there is also an investigation launched by Wisconsin Republicans into the 2020 election, run by a guy who says the election was stolen and who's hired Trump administration officials as his investigators. That investigation is ongoing to the tune of at least many hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars. But this is not that. This was just a random guy tooling around making copies of ballots because he decided to run his own private freelance election investigation. And once the local press cottoned on to what he was doing, it didn't take long for them to realize that the guy wandering the state copying ballots for his own freelance investigation was, in fact, our friend who went to prison for his catfish waste into gelatin scam. And look, this guy has served his time. He's paid his debt to society, even if, as of 2020, he apparently hadn't paid back much of the nearly $2 million that he also owes in restitution. And I suppose if he wants to travel the state of Wisconsin making copies of ballots, it's a free country. And apparently that is something you are free to do in Wisconsin. Help yourself. But by this December, things had kind of escalated. In a December lawsuit, he accused the director of elections in Milwaukee of being part of a, quote, sect that planned, conspired, and implemented a massive election fraud by using fake names and fake addresses to cast ballots. He claimed that this sect allowed somebody to print ballots for Biden in a back conference room. His filing included a hand-drawn floor plan of an election office with a spot labeled, quote, hidden room. Someone was sleeping, snoring. And now that guy, the catfish waste into gelatin scam, make copies of all the ballots, there's a secret sect in a hidden room printing ballots for Biden guy, that guy, well, he was invited by Republicans to give a presentation to the state's Assembly Elections Committee.
Someone is using, we don't know who, someone is using our systems, our databases, to cast illegal ballots. We have found tens of thousands. We don't know who's doing it. It's probably not the person who's the name. It's probably some bad guys. Something's wrong. Somebody's in there. Somebody's doing something wrong, casting illegal ballots. Somebody's in there. They're adding names. They're adding fake voters. They're casting illegal ballots by the tens of thousands. So I appreciate your time, and thank you for having me here today.
They're adding fake voters. They're casting illegal ballots by the tens of thousands. We don't know who's doing it, but it's bad guys. Bad guys are doing it. And he should know he's got thousands of volunteers and a supercomputer working on this stuff. This is what Republicans on the Elections Committee are doing in Wisconsin right now. Now, I will say there are a couple of Democrats on that committee. They tried valiantly to pin this guy down on something. He was a bit like gelatin. It was tough going.
You did say that there were people who told you or told your group that they had showed up to vote at the polls and were told that someone had already voted in their name. Do you have, either for us or for law enforcement, affidavits from those people detailing those issues?
What we do is we encourage those people. Many of them are afraid to come forward, but we have found hundreds and hundreds of them.
None of them would sign an affidavit?
I would say none, but we don't say if we have 500, maybe a dozen.
I take 5.
Yeah. No, I don't have them. No, okay. I don't.
The poor state assemblyman. Do you have any evidence? Maybe 5 people? Maybe 1 person? Nope, sorry, you're just going to have to take my word for it. We also reached out to this gentleman this evening to ask if he could provide us with any evidence. He didn't respond to our request for comment.
It is Friday, the 11th of February of 2022. and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Well, we made it to the weekend, which means, not the type of news dumps that we were accustomed to with the previous guy. But, we're still in the throes of Friday news dumps now. Not necessarily to hide, though that was the modus operandi for so long. Yeah, well, some people might call it a gish gallop. Where you just get an overabundance of information while you're trying to process bits of it. More comes in to overwhelm you. I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. Earnings reports came out, and looks like a bunch of CEOs made a bunch of money and then bragged about raising prices. And it was a twofer for them, because they not only made a bunch of money, but then they could blame it on inflation, and that is exactly what they are doing. So I was right. Told you so. I'm trademarking that. Better do it before Drift Class does. Maybe he already has. Anyway, told you so. One person's inflation is another person's price gouging during a crisis. All right. Will there be any repercussions for their, well, a lot of people would call that criminal behavior. They would. Because in a normal world, it would be criminal behavior, but apparently we are no longer in a normal world. In a normal world, mobsters who have risen to the heights of the presidency, who continued their criming, would be investigated, would be tried, and would be convicted for those crimes, sentenced to a term in a federal lockup. In a normal world. We don't live in normal worlds anymore. Somehow we all transferred to that weird opposite world on the opposite side of the sun. Oh my God. Everything is backwards. Well, most everything. Enough to let us know that, hey, something is amiss. How is it that this guy can get away with it? He's been getting away with it his whole life. Don't call it systemic. Just don't. Oh, wow. So are we over the gazpacho thing? Now, I got to tell you, I love gazpacho. A really good gazpacho is great when the weather warrants it. I'm serious. When the weather warrants it. All right. I like cold soups. I like Japanese cold soba, too. Oh, my God. I love that. Okay, so, I almost forgot. It's Super Bowl weekend, isn't it? My God, that used to be such a religious experience for so long. We used to gather in big old groups, 20, 30 people to watch the Super Bowl. Had a big old party, lots of drinking too. Start drinking before noon. And the game never really started till the opening ceremonies that took hours started around 2. The game was around 4-ish. By the time 4 ran around, oh my God. Yeah, if you had some hard liquor going on before noon, you might need to take a nap. And if you took a nap, you might run the risk of missing the big game. Don't want to do that. Yeah, it was a religious experience. Now, I don't know. What is it? I don't know. I don't know what it is anymore. Maybe I became what I feared I would become, and that was like an old guy who just didn't care about sports anymore, especially professional sports. And I would lump probably college sports in that genre as well now because of the money-making prowess that they bring in. Yeah, at some point you'll see the folly of it all. Our attentions could be directed towards something a little bit of more substance, possibly. Like, I don't know, the Nazi takeover of the United States of America and the world. This trucker protest, though their numbers be small, their influence has generated interest worldwide to the point of having copycat. They call it a convoy. Some people call it a blockade. But they're having copycat trucker blockades around the world. How's that happening? Hostile foreign power against Western democracy? Who might that be? Well, I don't think the Chinese have it in them to be able to come up with the idea of a trucker protest. But you know who does? Yeah, you know who. The guy who had to move his yacht really quick because it was in Germany and he doesn't want to have this mega yacht with a hot and cold dipping pool, a couple of helipads, an actual reflection swimming pool, to do laps in. It's well appointed. A disco, a movie theater. This yacht is huge. And but he doesn't have to have any bridges dismantled to remove it because he removed it quick. It was in dry dock having some work done on it. And he just took it. Now, granted, it's only suspected to be Putin's yacht because that's how these mobsters do it, right? Layers and layers of, unaccountability. But most everybody in the world recognizes it as being Putin's yacht. So he hightailed that thing out of there. Apparently it's worth a pretty penny, and he doesn't want it confiscated when the sanctions come down. And we have some news about that part of the world. A warning to Americans, so stay tuned for that. Oh, yeah. So the former guy was flushing top secret material down the toilet. Even said right there, classified. Apparently, he believes that he has like an Article 2 that allows him to do anything he wants, and he can get away with it. Remember, he came up and I've never heard any president go off like about an Article 2. How long has this country been a representative democracy? A couple 100 years. And suddenly this guy comes out and starts spouting off a bunch of stuff that no one's ever heard before. At least within the context of the executive branch. I have an Article 2. It means I can shoot somebody in Times Square and Fifth Avenue and get away with it. And he did. Almost 1 million people dead from COVID. 1 million. And we still have the people who put this guy in office ghoulishly reveling in the fact that people are dying. It's the only way to have herd immunity is getting rid of all the weak ones. Boy, that sounds rather Germanic in a Teutonic Nazi way. We're not the Nazis, you the Nazi. I don't think so. We're anti-fascists. Oh, you're Antifa. Yeah, well, we're not anarchists. You think that when you say Antifa, you're seeing like Black Bloc or something. Which I got to tell you, I don't believe in Black Bloc. I don't believe Black Bloc is who they say they are. I think they've been infiltrated with enough agent provocateurs that they are suspect. So whenever I see Black Bloc walking around, I'm thinking, there's a bunch of agent provocateurs trying to cause some probs. Because whenever Black Bloc shows up, there's a bunch of probs that only agent provocateurs do. There's a long history of it, I've got to tell you. Do you think it started with the Black Panthers? I don't think so. It even started before the Zoot Suiters in L.A. Pinkertons even. Even before the Pinkertons. Anyway, yeah, we're Antifa. And we don't mistake gazpacho for the Gestapo. All right? We don't mistake the parliamentarian for the Parmesan-tarian. Most likely, Asiago my way, and Asiago, you'll go yours. What? I guess I didn't quite do that correctly. But you know what I mean. This is the kind of education they have. I thought we were over that. Okay, we're over the gazpacho story. Jeez. Between Marjorie Taylor Greene and this Berbert, jeez, I don't know. I blame the homeschooling. I really, really do. Oh, my God, look at the time. All right, well, it is the end of the week, and we could just carry on. We could, because apparently there's no rules for us now either. Yes, there are. There's conventions, and if we are anything, we are but social creatures. And social creatures like to get along. And those who don't like to get along, well, normally they're shunned, not revered. I don't know what's going on here. You don't revere the antisocial one? No. All right. What's on the rest of the menu here in the curated part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy as we start off in the Bistro Cafe part? Yes, indeed, on this fabulous Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Yes, at the top, a convicted fraudster and self-appointed election auditor was invited by Wisconsin Republicans to present his personal, colorful, stolen election conspiracy theory to the State Assembly's Elections Committee. And with that testimony, they're just going to keep more and more people from voting. Because this guy said he found some fraud. Can't present what the fraud is, but he said it, and that's all they need. Stare decisis my ass. On the rest of the menu, a judge restored federal protections for gray wolves across much of the U.S. California regulators sued Tesla for discriminating against black employees who have been likened to monkeys and slaves. You know what's weird is I haven't heard that since apartheid. I wonder why we're hearing it now. And the CIA has a secret undisclosed data repository that includes information collected about you, me, and all the rest of us Americans. All of us. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Latvia passed a long-awaited Holocaust restitution law, and the United States urged Americans in Ukraine to leave immediately due to the increased threats of Russian military action. If Putin's moved his yacht, I'd move my ass out of the Ukraine. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by the Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the left, across the page from the chat room link, there is the link to the left near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. Is the link to our Patreon page, and if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and if you could afford to send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink once a month, we are able then to put a big dent in the bills and the continuous costly upgrades of hardware and software that is pretty much required to keep this powerhouse of resistance resisting. And thank you to some recent Patreons. You know who you are. Thank you for helping us out here. We've been doing this for almost 11 years. And when I say almost 11 years, I mean 24/7, 365. Continuous resistance broadcasting against dark forces arrayed against the United States of America and representative democracy itself across the face of the globe. We're going to be a small bulwark against that. Though we be small, we be mighty, and it's because of your generosity in allowing us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended, oh so many years ago. Anyway, thank you, and seriously, thank you for your generosity. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter. I suggest that you do. And why? Well, because that's one of the places I post the show notes and links diary from Daily Co's. I post it there at Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, so you could pick it up there. But then I post it on Twitter and other social media platforms, so look at those show notes and links. That's where the real reportage is. Okay, we're transparent about that. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And, did I mention at Justice Putnam? Yes, of course. Follow me at Justice Putnam for the show notes and links. You can follow the show at Cookbook West, and you can pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, wherever you can find podcasts. And also, the deep archive of Netroots Radio shows over all these many years can be found at the Internet Archive. Archive.org. Links are in the show notes and links diary, but you can also look forward to it being on part of our homepage real soon when we update the homepage at netrootsradio.com. Okay. Don't bump the mic. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe on this fine Blue Moon Spirits Fridays is out of the Associated Press by Matthew Brown and John Fletcher. A judge restored federal protections for gray wolves across much of the U.S. yesterday, Thursday, after their removal in the waning days of the Trump administration exposed the predators to hunting that critics said would undermine their rebound from widespread extermination early last century, meaning in the early 1900s. U.S. District Judge Jeffrey White in Oakland, California, said the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service had failed to show wolf populations could be sustained in the Midwest and portions of the West without protection under the Endangered Species Act. The service also did not adequately consider threats to wolves outside those core areas. Wildlife advocates had sued the agency last year. The ruling does not directly impact wolves in the northern Rocky Mountains of Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, and portions of several adjacent states. Those animals remain under state jurisdiction after federal protections in that region were lifted by Congress last decade, the Republican Congress. Attorneys for the Biden administration defended the Trump rule that removed protections, arguing wolves were resilient enough to bounce back even if their numbers dropped sharply to intensive hunting. So intensive it was actually way over the quota in some of these areas. And when I say way over the quota, I mean way over the quota, decimating whole clans of wolves. If you know the demographics of clannish dogs. Anyway, they decimated whole families, whole groups. Please. At stake is the future of a species whose recovery from near extinction has been heralded as a historic conservation success. That recovery has brought bitter blowback from hunters and farmers, angered over wolf attacks on big game herds and livestock. They contend protections are no longer warranted. Interior Department spokesperson Melissa Swartz said the agency was reviewing Thursday's decision and offered no further comment. Wildlife advocacy groups said the judge's order would most immediately put a stop to hunting in the Great Lakes region, where Wisconsin officials had come under criticism after a wolf hunt last year blew past the state's quotas, killing 218 wolves in 4 days. Wolves in the Great Lakes region now have a stay of execution, said John Horning with the environmental group Wild Earth Guardians. Michael Leitke of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. California regulators have sued Tesla Inc., alleging the electric car maker has been discriminating against black employees who have been likened monkeys and slaves at the San Francisco Bay Area factory where most of its trendy vehicles are made. The explosive lawsuit seems likely to widen a rift between Tesla CEO Elon Musk, the world's wealthiest person, and the state where he launched the company. Tesla is now worth more than $900 billion, less than 20 years after Musk set out to transform the auto industry. Musk moved Tesla's headquarters from Palo Alto, California to Austin, Texas last year after publicly feuding with California officials over whether Tesla's factory should remain shut down during the spring of 2020 while the coronavirus pandemic was still in its early stages. The 39-page lawsuit filed late on Wednesday in Alameda County Superior Court by California's Department of Fair Employment and Housing frames Tesla's move to Texas as an attempt to evade accountability for turning a blind eye to years of complaints from black workers who protest commonplace use of racial slurs on the assembly line. In response to the complaints, the lawsuit alleges Musk has told workers to be thick-skinned about racial harassment, contributing to the culture that is slow to clean up racist graffiti and other hateful symbols scrawled around the factory. Besides the N-word, other racist language used in the factory include descriptions that liken black workers to a porch monkey and hood rats, and suggestions that they go back to Africa, according to the lawsuit. The complaint also alleges the factory was racially segregated, resulting in the area where black workers labored to be derided as the slave ship or the plantation. Before news of the lawsuit broke, Tesla preemptively posted a statement on its website lashing out at what it called an unfair and counterproductive lawsuit. The company asserted that the agency has been asked on nearly 50 occasions during the past 5 years to look into allegations of discrimination and harassment and closed each investigation without finding any evidence of misconduct. It therefore strains credibility for the agency to now allege, after a 3-year investigation, that systematic racial discrimination and harassment somehow existed at Tesla, the company wrote while trying to frame the lawsuit as a publicity stunt. All the racist symbols and the N-word and all that, oh yeah, it's just in our minds. And the black workers have to develop a thick skin so they can work in the township. The allegations against Tesla resulted from a 32-month investigation into its discriminatory practices, according to the lawsuit. The complaint seeks back pay for black employees who were unfairly bypassed for promotion and raises, reinstatements of workers who lost their jobs for discriminatory reasons, and punitive damages. Musk, who frequently takes to his Twitter account with 73 million followers to comment about issues affecting Tesla, had not posted anything about the discrimination lawsuit as of late last night, Thursday. Now, this is not the first time that Tesla's treatment of the roughly 15,000 employees at its Fremont, California factory has come under scrutiny. The factory, located about 40 miles southeast of San Francisco, across the bay in the East Bay, by the way, remains Tesla's biggest manufacturer of electric cars, even as the company has opened additional plants, including a new one in Texas, where they don't care if you use the N-word, and they don't care if you discriminate against black people, brown people, because, hey, it's Texas. Last October, a federal jury awarded $137 million in damages to a former black elevator operator who alleged he faced daily racist slurs and other forms of harassment while working at the Fremont plant in 2015 and 2016 before quitting. Now, of course, Tesla is appealing that verdict and has denied any knowledge of racist conduct that the former elevator operator, Owen Diaz, said took place at the plant. Of course not. And then, more than a half dozen current and former Tesla employees filed another lawsuit, alleging the company did not take adequate steps to protect them against sexual harassment. Tesla is seeking to shift those complaints into forced arbitration. Norman Merchant of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, it looks like COINTELPRO has been risen from the ashes of the ashes of the ashes. The CIA has a secret undisclosed data repository that includes information collected about Americans, two Democrats on the Senate Intel Committee said. While neither the agency nor the lawmakers would disclose specifics about the data, the senators alleged the CIA had long hidden details about the program from the public and Congress. My senator, Ron Wyden here in Oregon, and Martin Heinrich of New Mexico sent a letter to top Intel officials calling for more details about the program to be declassified. Large parts of the letter, which was sent in April of 2021 and declassified yesterday, Thursday, and documents released by the CIA were blacked out. Wyden and Heinrich said the program operated outside the statutory framework that Congress and the public believe govern this collection. There have long been concerns about what information of the intelligence community collects domestically, driven in parts by previous violations of American civil liberties. The CIA and the NSA have a foreign mission and are generally barred from investigating Americans or U.S. businesses. But the spy agency's sprawling collection of foreign communications often snares Americans' messages and data incidentally, sort of like how the Trumps gotten snared. Or one of the ways. Intelligence agencies are required to take steps to protect U.S. information, including redacting the names of any Americans from reports unless they are deemed relevant to an investigation. The process of removing redactions is known as unmasking. The CIA released a series of redacted recommendations about the program issued by an oversight panel known as the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board. According to the document, a pop-up box warns CIA analysts using the program that seeking any information about U.S. citizens and others covered by privacy laws requires a foreign intelligence purpose. However, analysts are not required to memorialize the justification for their queries. And why is that? Both senators have long pushed for more transparency from the intel agencies. Nearly a decade ago, a question Wyden posed to the nation's spy chief presaged critical revelations about the NSA's mass surveillance programs. In 2013, Wyden asked then Director of National Intelligence James Clapper if the NSA collected any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans. Clapper initially responded no, and then he later equivocated, not wittingly. Clapper would later apologize in a letter to the Senate Intel Committee, calling his response to Wyden clearly erroneous. Now, according to Wyden and Heinrich's letter, the CIA's bulk collection program operates outside of laws passed and reformed by Congress, but under the authority of Executive Order 12333, the document that broadly governs intelligence community activity and was first signed by President Ronald Reagan in 1981. It is critical that Congress not legislate without awareness of a CIA program and that the American public not be misled into believing that the reforms in any reauthorization legislation fully cover the IC's collection of their records, Wyden and Heinrich wrote in their letter. There was a redaction in the letter before CIA program. Well, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, The City Mouse. Documentaries used to feel like cinema's poor country mouse. I mean, there were features, and then there were the small underfunded films about the plight of Appalachian miners, or the New York sewer system, or rangers in America's national forest, which were clearly someone's passion project, and were interesting once you got yourself to get into them. But these days, in the wake of reality TV, in the world of Netflix, and especially with the success of series like Cheer, Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich, and Tiger King, documentaries can be salacious, sensationalist, must-have coffee break conversation. In 2019, the Norwegian online tabloid Verdens Gang, or just VG, published a story about an Israeli con artist who hunted successful women on Tinder, convinced them that he was a successful millionaire diamond merchant, gained their trust, friendship, and even love, and then drained them of all of their money and more. VG called him Der Tinder Swindler. Netflix must have jumped on this story because just a couple of years later we have their latest feature documentary, The Tinder Swindler, directed by Felicity Morris, in her directorial debut. No narrator, the spine of the doc is 4 interviews, 3 with women who were conned and 1 with reporters from VG, and it is so slickly packaged. You spend the whole first half of the movie hearing from 2 of the swipeable, likable women, talking about the jet trips and luxury hotels and 4-star restaurants at the con start, and since all these relationships took place through social media, Morris has actual texts, pictures, and even video to sprinkle into the narrative. It's a retailer's dream. Plus, there's all of this B-roll. They get one of their subjects to reenact heading out to her first date, and Jessica Jones's music runs from upbeat to fraught as the con sets in. It's almost too much. The Tinder Swindler feels ready to titillate more than educate. Fortunately, the core story is real enough and moving enough to pair plenty of cheese with the caviar. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
As the days get longer and the weather warms, people of all ages will start to spring into action. Spring is a great time to breathe fresh air, stretch your arms and legs, and get physically active outdoors. Lack of physical activity contributes to obesity, heart disease, stroke, and other chronic health conditions. Fortunately, many communities are making it easier and safer to be physically active. Neighborhoods across the country are working together to create more public spaces for walking, running, biking, and other physical activities. Adults should get at least 150 minutes of physical activity each week, and children should get 60 minutes a day. If you find it hard to walk to a local recreation center, park, or playground, learn how to make your neighborhood a place that makes healthy living easier. Visit makinghealtheasier.org for information about ways communities can change to get more people outside and moving.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Suddenly, social distancing is our new national etiquette, abruptly supplanting handshakes, hugs, gatherings, and other forms of ingrained communal behavior by us humans. Awkward, disconcerting, isolating. Yet, as we frantically scramble to deter the health and economic ravages of COVID-19, we might benefit by pondering a self-inflicted cause of the contagion's disastrous spread: social distancing. For some 40 years, American corporations and governments have imposed economic, political, and social policies to distance the financial fortunes of the wealthy few from the well-being of the workaday majority. Consider the interrelationship of multimillionaires with the unseen kitchen staff of restaurants where they dine. To further enrich themselves, such multimillionaires have forced low-wage policies on food preparers, denied health coverage for them, and lobbied to kill proposals to provide paid sick leave. So, a kitchen worker coughs because he or she is infected with coronavirus, but doesn't know it, since the worker has no health care coverage for testing. Even though running a fever, the staffer must come to work or lose the job. A few days later, a multimillionaire sneezes because, well, COVID-19 doesn't distinguish between rich and poor. The very proposals that plutocrats have been blocking for years, like living wages, Medicare for all, home health care, and others, are exactly what a sane government would adopt to avoid the consequences of inequality that now confronts every American. This is Jim Hightower saying the actual disease that's forcing social distancing on our country is the widening separation of rich elites from the rest of us. And the cure is a national push for renewed social cohesiveness. The catastrophic spread of COVID-19 reveals a truth we too often deny. We are a species of completely interdependent beings.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Both the North and the South benefited economically from slavery. In the South, slaveholders exploited the free labor of enslaved African Americans to grow indigo, rice, sugarcane, tobacco, and cotton, among many other crops on both large plantations and small plots of land. Cotton became the major crop after the invention of the cotton gin in 1793 allowed greatly increased production, and cotton was exported to the North and to Great Britain to be made into cloth. The South became economically dependent on slave labor. In the North, the economy was more diversified, and enslaved people were forced to perform a wide variety of occupations, from sailors to skilled craftsmen. Enslaved people were considered property by slaveholders and by the law. Over time, northern states began to abolish slavery, but the southern states refused to do so, having invested too much in the system of slavery that fueled the southern economy. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. Did you work a 40-hour work week this week? If you did, this is an important day for you. On this day in labor history, the year was 1926. And on this day, labor leader Benjamin Gold began what became a general strike of all furriers in New York City. Benjamin Gold was born in Russia and immigrated with his family to the United States when he was 12 years old. He worked at several jobs before entering work in the fur industry. He became active in the Furrier Union at only 14 years old. In 1926, Gold helped lead some 12,000 workers, including Jewish, Greek, and African American furriers, on strike. One of their core demands was a 40-hour work week. Despite numerous acts of police brutality against the workers, constant red baiting, and dwindling strike funds, the workers held strong. Ben Gold helped raise money for the strikers, visiting other union halls throughout the city to sell 40-hour Liberty bonds. He helped get the New York State Federation of Labor and other unions in the city to support the cause. He argued that the 40-hour work week was important for all workers in New York and across the nation. With this support, Gold organized a rally at Madison Square Garden. The labor supporters filled the garden, making it the largest labor meeting in New York up to that time. After 17 long weeks, the furriers were successful, winning their first contract that recognized a 40-hour, 5-day work week. They also won a 25% pay increase, union inspection of shops, an employer contribution to an unemployment insurance fund, a paid day off, and equal assignments of work without favoritism. These brave workers helped to set the standard for the work week of today. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 37 degrees Fahrenheit, and it even feels like 37 degrees Fahrenheit. Under extremely heavy foggy conditions, we'll get partly cloudy skies later on. Winds will be light and variable and highs in the low 70s. Clear skies tonight, lows in the upper 30s, with winds remaining light and variable. And then tomorrow, Saturday, we'll have a high of around 70 once again. And Super Bowl Sunday looks about the same. And then later on in the day on Super Bowl Sunday, it looks like we'll be socked in, and looks like rain later on that night and showers on Monday. We'll see how that shakes out. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon continue to increase, even though there's a clamor to take off our masks. We have now risen in confirmed cases to 404,055, and our deceased have also increased and now stands at 448. Pollen is rated as none outside the window in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 25 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is moderate at level 3. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.24 inches. Visibility is down to less than half a mile, and relative humidity is at 95%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that are crowdsources from around the world. London is 47 and partly cloudy. Paris is 47 and partly cloudy. Rome is 60 degrees and fair. Kyiv is 40 and partly cloudy. Kabul is 30 and clear. Hong Kong is 60 degrees and fair. Tokyo is 38 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 70 degrees and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 57 and sunny. And New York, New York is a balmy 50 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Jerry Tanner of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Latvia's parliament passed a Holocaust restitution bill yesterday, Thursday, that includes compensation for lost Jewish property and funding to revitalize the Baltic nation's Jewish community, which was almost completely wiped out during World War II. Following years of wrangling over the issue, the 100-seat Seima voted 64-21 to approve the law on the compensation of goodwill to the Latvian Jewish community on the bill's final reading. Lengthy negotiations involving the World Jewish Restitution Organization, or the WJRO, Latvian Jewish representatives and government authorities started in 2005. The U.S. and Israel were also involved in the talks. The bill authorizes spending $45 million U.S. over 10 years to revitalize Latvia's 9,500-strong Jewish community, provide social and material assistance to Holocaust survivors, and to fund Jewish schools, building restoration, and cultural projects. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken tweeted praise for Latvia's ongoing work to preserve the memory of the Holocaust and promote education about this dark period in history. Passing the bill shows true commitment to addressing Holocaust-era property theft, Blinken said. Latvia was occupied in June 1940 by the Soviet Red Army, which was pushed away a year later by Nazi Germany's advancing troops. Moscow retook Latvia in late 1944, and the country remained part of the Soviet Union until it gained independence in 1991.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anonymous staff at Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The U.S. has urged Americans in Ukraine to leave immediately due to the increased threats of Russian military action against Ukraine. Do not travel to Ukraine due to increased threats of Russian military action and COVID-19. Those in Ukraine should depart now via commercial or private means, the U.S. State Department said in an advisory. Russia denies planning an attack on Ukraine, but has amassed tens of thousands on its border with Ukraine. Get out and get out now. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day, all night, and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here on Monday, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.